So, Lisa, I imagine that so many people wanted to make the movie about Gilda. And so when I saw this movie was opening at Tribeca, I was surprised that there hadn't been a movie yet about Gilda. Can you talk a little bit about how this project came to you, and also how you got access to all of the incredible material that is part of this wonderful film?
Well, what's really interesting is there's been a couple TV movies about Gilda. So when I came about with the idea, which I'll tell you in a second, there wasn't any interest. There was people don't know who Gilda Radner is anymore. So it was really hard at the beginning. So the way I came about the project is I do fundraising videos for Gilda's Club, which is a cancer organization founded by Gene Wilder and Gilda's friends after Gilda passed away. And the original one is in New York City, but there's 18 of them throughout the country, and it's an amazing place. And when you walk through the door, you see photos and etches of Gilda all over the place. And many of the members had read her book called It's Always Something. So when I would interview them for these fundraising videos, they would talk about Gilda as if she was a friend. And many people reached for her when they were going through the same experience that she was going through. So I thought she had an amazing legacy, that not only is she just an amazing, iconic female comedian, but she really is somebody who inspires people in a very important way, probably every day.
And you have had a really interesting career. You started out in acting, and then you progressed to do more of your own work, and then you also work in an advertising agency where you've done a lot of hour-long documentary pieces. Can you talk about what's different about this project, and also what were the different ways that you thought that you might go with it, and how did it turn out to be primarily used with her own voice?
Well, what's different than anything I've ever done before is I had to raise my own money. So raising money was a very essential part of a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker's part of making a film. So that was extremely eye-opening and a learning experience. So the film was originally meant to be a shorter film, mostly for members of Gilda's Club. And about halfway through, about 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, I asked Michael Radner, Gilda's brother, who's been a really great supporter of the film in every imaginable way. And he said he had some things in storage, and they were going to stay there forever because they're heavy. And I was like, no, I'll come to Detroit. And Gilda's friend Judy also said, we'll come, we'll help you with the boxes. And when we came to his house, he had dozens of boxes. And in there were these amazing, everything's amazing, photos. There was a home movie, The Cancer, where you see Gilda with her 9th chemotherapy. She created her own 20-minute video. And in there were audio tapes, too. So there was 32 hours of Gilda telling her life story. So once I saw this amazing material, and once I listened to Gilda, I was like, oh, well, once I listened to Gilda in these audio tapes, I knew I wanted to tell her story, that she needed to tell her story. So that was really the direction I wanted to go at. And one thing that I've never mentioned to an audience, the song that you hear up front, Disco Gilda, that was never released. So that was also in the boxes. So that was another find, a song that Gilda and Paul Schaefer created that nobody's ever heard before.
Yeah, I mean, I think this film is so incredible because it feels very intimate, and it's a woman telling her own story. And a lot of documentaries, a lot of documentaries feature many talking heads, and we do hear from other people in this film, but it strikes me as so unique. What a wonderful opportunity to have her be able to tell her own story, up until even the extras at the end. So that was a really wonderful experience to see it. I had a question for you, Anne, because there's so much material, both still photography and, video of different formats. How did you go about working with Lisa on the edit of so much archival material?
Like, how did I call it down? Yeah, there was a lot. I mean, I think to Lisa's credit, as she just mentioned, she was, that she was adamant that, that Gilda tell her own story. And for a while, we weren't sure if the audio quality was going to be good enough. I mean, it was a real issue. As you can tell, sometimes there's, it's really gravelly. So once we figured out we could do it and we had enough to do it, then we would sort of, we took it down from 32 to 13 and then just kept going and sort of weaved a tapestry of not only her private audio tapes, which she recorded when she was in remission. Then we also included audio interviews and video interviews, and then some from her book, and then sort of kind of edited around the verite gems that we had. The home movies were really key to everything.
Yeah, I think it was really striking, the photography of her at each moment and how the mood transitioned from one section of the film to the other using so many beautiful still photographs.
Yeah, I mean, that's all thanks to Michael Radner, who kept all that stuff, and her friend. That's right.
Yeah. Her friends, not
Judy, yes.
So a lot of, besides the material from the boxes, so much came from Gilda's friends. Alan and Robin Zweibel had some home movies, Gilda's friend Judy, and just we collected from whoever we could. So they were very generous in adding to the library of what we had.
So Laraine, first of all, I want to just thank you for all the wonderful characters that you've brought to us. It's so wonderful seeing the clips of you all together, and I wonder how it is for you seeing this film and also thinking about when you first started out together. I think you were 23 and maybe Gilda was 21. I mean, that just seems quite a while ago.
I think she was 6 years older than me. And I'm going to talk into the mic, by the way.
Great.
One of the first things Gilda and I did together was go shopping. We went to Saks. I told Lisa this story. Knowing that she was 6 years older than me, and we were in one of those dressing rooms with the neon lighting that makes everybody look like shit. And I'm looking at the back of her legs, and, I have, not to brag, but really significant cellulite. And on her, nothing. She had the most beautiful legs. And so that was, the first blow. But it was interesting to see the Lampoon Hour because she took me up there, and I actually ended up being on that album, That's Not Funny, That's Sick. It's just because she brought me up there to meet people because I didn't know anybody, and being the person that she was, she wanted me to have friends, I guess. And she knew I was scared. She knew I didn't know anybody in New York, and she kind of took me under her wing.
Wow. And, there's a section in the film that really talks about how it was for women on that show at that time. And then we see the new generation of SNL women sort of talking about how influenced they were by you and Gilda and Jane Curtin. What's your take on that period and women in comedy and how you felt then?
Well, I know that women stand-ups had a very difficult time, but coming from an improvisational review is a completely different thing because you write your own material also, like a stand-up, but it's a collegial discipline. And also, Lorne Michaels was such a champion of women's humor. He wrote for Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers and obviously Lily Tomlin. That was when I first worked for him on a Lily Tomlin special. And so Lorne was an absolute unequivocal supporter of women's humor. And I remember somebody saying that Gilda never felt like she was second to the guys, and none of us did because we came from I think it's like whatever happened with the women's movement, we were of that generation where we could just take it in stride because they'd already gone before us and broken down all the barriers.
And how did you feel seeing the finished movie? I mean, you have one of the best lines in the movie, the clit snipper. How did you feel about were there things that you learned
Absolutely.
in the movie
There were a lot of
didn't
things
know?
I didn't know. I didn't know she went to the hospital. When we were doing the show, I had no idea that that happened. There were a lot of things that were a revelation to me. I'm trying to think of one of the most significant, but I'll have to circle around because I can't remember what it was. But one of the things that strikes me most, and I think you're all I think we can all recognize that it brought her to life. And this is what I've said to Lisa, is that the way in which she did this, it made it feel and look like Gilda contributed, like she was there participating in making this movie. And that's a great accomplishment on Lisa's part and the editor.
Yeah, wonderful. I guess another question that I would have for you is that, Lisa, is that, I'm sure you asked a lot of people to be in the movie and to be interviewed. What do you think, what did you say to Laraine, for example, to get her on board? And what were the different responses that you got from different people when you approached them about the film?
Well, each interview led to another interview. So that was sort of how that happened. It's very, very hard to get to people that you don't know, especially if they have. It's very hard to get to performers to go through their agents. So you really need to have access. So in order to get to Laraine, I mean, I started 4 years ago on this film, and I started trying to recruit people over a period of time. But one led to another, led to another, led to another. And I was very lucky. Gilda's friend Alan Zweibel and Robin Zweibel are executive producers. So they were very influential in helping some of, I think, having Laraine can tell you better, but it was really through people that I knew.
And Jordan, we see you as a really young kid in this movie. And we see you grow and change. And I'm wondering, I know you were at the Tribeca premiere.
Yes.
This is the second time that you've seen the movie. I don't know if you stayed for the whole
I
thing.
I did not have the courage to watch the whole film today, I'll admit.
But can you talk a little bit about this project and what it means to you?
What it means to me, thanking Lisa publicly, I have thanked you privately, is that Gilda got her voice back. Gilda's voice was submerged for a very long time, and it was partly my responsibility and partly Jean's responsibility. It was too painful. And then when you bury the pain that deeply, I guess you don't realize how deeply you buried it. And so she was there with us in ways. Certainly her voice, I'll wake up in the kitchen sometime and, what are you doing? Go for the coffee over there. But the life of it, her voice, had kind of disappeared. And what is so special about the film is that she got her voice back. And it's not just her voice through her performances, but it's actually her voice. And when she was dying the last year of her life, at the point where she knew she was dying, she was on a desperate journey. That's how she wrote the book. She was on a desperate journey to say something that would impact people and that she felt she could leave a legacy to. And the book was a start, but I feel this film and everyone's work in it, to me, just on a familial, emotional, not objective level, I heard her again. and that other people would hear her again. That's the most special thing.
And Lisa, do you feel like the film is reaching new generations of people that maybe weren't old enough to have seen the original episodes?
I hope it does. I hope the film reaches younger people, because our audiences primarily have been people who remember Gilda, and they're coming to learn more about her and discover her again. But when I have shown the film to high school students and some college students who have never heard of Gilda, they've watched the film or they've watched the trailer, and they're very inspired by her. So I'm hoping it does reach a new generation. So tell your young friends to come out and see the film.
So what is the plan for the release of the film, and how can people see it?
Well, it's very exciting. On September 21st, the film will be out in 30 cities. And it'll be, I'm not sure what theaters, but it'll be opening in San Francisco. And I think Berkeley also, so that's very exciting. And also on demand for the people who won't be able to come to the theater, or for young people who don't go to the theater, they can watch it on their phone.
Okay. Let's open it up to the audience. I know that people will probably have questions, so raise your hands and we'll find you.
Have one over here.
Yeah, when I was down in New York many years ago, I was surprised to see Gilda Radner Way as one of the streets in the village. What do you know about the history of Gilda Radner Way?
That's on the block of Gilda's Club. So it's right on the corner. So Gilda's Club had that street dedicated to her. Yes.
Hello. Thank you so much for this amazing film and for bringing Gilda to life again for us. Thank you for what you said about your aunt's voice being heard. That was so beautiful. And Laraine, first of all, thank you for everything you've done. And I'm I'm wondering, what is your favorite memory of working together with Gilda that was either your happiest or funniest?
When we did the New Orleans show, which was a complete disaster on every imaginable level, lots of stuff happened. I mean, you know, we were put into a room in a building having no idea what part of town we were in. We were told to wait there until they got around to rehearsing with us, and they forgot about us. And we were there for 4 hours, and the only thing in the room we were in was one of those trash cans with the foot pedal that lifted the lid. So she made a puppet out of it. You know, things like that. But we were so tired and having way too much fun in New Orleans. And Marilyn Miller and Gilda and I were in Marilyn's hotel room, and we were all sitting in the bathtub together. And Marilyn had read a story about a woman dying, this is not kind of morbid, dying in her apartment and her dachshunds eating her. So we started that thing way before Chris Guest and Billy Crystal did. Don't you hate it when a dachshund eats your face? And we just, you know, like built on that and just laughing so hard. Somebody peed. I'm not going to say who, but it's just, you know, those cherished moments where you're that tired that everything is funny, and that was another great memory.
Another question over here on your left.
Hi, David Lample with the Bay Area Reporter. Love the film. Love to recall the days when Saturday Night Live was really funny, you know, in the early days. It hasn't been for a number of years, but it was good to see what the premise of the show was and how wonderfully Gilda fit in with those other wonderful people, John Belushi and all, Chevy Chase and everything. That was an amazing group of people. What a way to launch a life.
Thank you. Here in the middle on your left.
Thanks so much for a wonderful film. Lisa, I'm wondering what's going to happen to the archival material that you collected for this film. Will it be available somewhere?
Well, as my friends have said, Gilda's the gift that keeps on giving. Because also in her archives, this is probably one of the beginning of some projects. She also left behind a screenplay that Michael, he didn't even know he had the only copy of her screenplay. She also wrote these wonderful, funny short stories. She, so there's a lot still to explore. And then we're Michael and I are talking about eventually where the archives will go.
A question here in the front.
And just to follow up on that, has there been any conversation to have a diary published like Joan Rivers and George Carlin have had similar things?
Yeah, I mean, the film was only finished a couple months ago, so I'm still sort of absorbing all we have. There's the diary that we talk about her eating disorder is pretty powerful. It takes place over a period of 6 months. So I did talk to Michael about possibly publishing that because I think it could really help people.
You know, a good place for some of her things is the National Comedy Center in Jamestown, which is Lucille Ball's hometown. And they have the, Lucy Museum there. And when they were going to build that, they approached her and said, "We want to do a museum to honor you." And she said, "I'd much prefer it if you did a museum to honor comedy." So this place was really her idea. And it has George Carlin's handwritten material. It has Rodney Dangerfield's handwritten material. And it's an amazing place, and I think it would be a great place for some of Gilda's things. Yeah. It's in Jamestown. It's Buffalo. You should pardon the expression. But Jamestown's really quite beautiful, and the museum is mind-blowing. It's a completely interactive experience, and yeah, I think they should have an exhibit of her stuff.
There's another question back here on the left.
Hi, you managed so well to capture her zany, wonderful appeal, and yet include some difficult subjects like her problems with food. From everything I've read, which there's been a lot written about Saturday Night Live, that camaraderie was accompanied by a lot of drug use, and that's not alluded to at all in the film. I wondered if you'd considered that and decided not to, or why.
Gilda didn't use drugs.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't part of her story. I really based the film on Gilda's personal material, and that was never anything that came up. I mean, we did at one point think about, Ann and I did think a little bit about the environment that Gilda was in, but this was really her story, so we wanted everything to come from her point of view, and that was nothing that we ever had any writings or audio tapes about her.
There's another question over here towards the back on your left.
Thank you. I want to thank you all, as many others have done here. You won't believe it, but the woman who just spoke asked my first question. I had two, which was Gilda, besides her struggles with cancer and with an eating disorder, was she ever struggling with substance abuse? And you've answered that, as so many others were in that period. My other question is just a footnote, and I noticed in the credits that Howard Shore was thanked, and I just wondered what he had to do with this.
Well, another part of the film that I'm very lucky for is that many of Gilda's friends donated their their artwork or their music. So I was able to use the song Honey because of Paul Schaefer and Howard Shore, and so and some other music, the Disco Gilda up front. So, and also Gilda's friend Edie Baskin, who was the SNL photographer, donated over 100 photos to the film. So I was very lucky to have, so that's why Howard is dedicated, because he was very generous.
Okay, another question over here on your far left.
Hi. I do have to just say, Laraine Newman's in the house. I have a question for Laraine in terms of women in comedy. I'm over here. I'm right here. Hello. Hi. So we have a lot of changes have happened in relation to women and their role in politics, comedy, all kinds of work. And I wonder if you worked with Al Franken at any time and what you think about what happened to him in terms of this whole accusation of his inappropriateness with someone.
Oh boy, this is going to get me in trouble because you can't say that you don't believe somebody, but I don't believe those women. You know, I knew Al, I've known Al since before SNL. And, you know, as much as I think, you know, the Me Too movement, its time has come, it's also come at a cost for really decent people. And that really breaks my heart. And, you know, the whole idea, the idea that Chuck Schumer and, what's her name, Elizabeth Warren, these people, Elizabeth Warren, I really just admired so much, and they did not stand by him. And I just think that's so rotten. And it was also the idea of, like, the definition of bitterness, you know, you drink poison hoping others would die. I mean, you know, thinking that that others would follow suit, you know, they'd somehow clean their house because, you know, liberals and Democrats were being so rigorous about themselves. That was so naive in my mind. And it just breaks my heart. He was a real public servant, a true believer, and a really decent guy. And we needed him in politics.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Let's make it a really good one.
Okay, towards the back on your right side.
No pressure.
Awesome. I'm interested to know how the whole getting together of Amy Poehler and Melissa McCarthy, Bill Hader took place and how it came to be and all of that, please.
Well, I had a list of modern, what we call the modern day comedians inspired by Gilda, which was massive list. And eventually the first person of the modern day comedians we got on board was Amy. And once Amy came on board, she really was very supportive in getting all the other people on board. I mean, they're all friends from the SNL time. So once Amy came on board, I was flying back and forth to LA, and within a month, I got everybody. And they were just amazing. And I was very shocked. I knew they were inspired by Gilda, but I was really shocked about their reaction to holding Gilda's personal diaries. Was really something I didn't expect.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Really, really wonderful part of the film to have them read, you know, and you could really see they were taking it all in. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you all so much. I hope you'll all continue the conversation with us down at the Contemporary Jewish Museum, so we'll see you there.